Hello again, Doug Robinson here, Robinson Training Solutions. It's time for another selling point. And today I want to talk about a topic that is really a bugaboo for most salespeople, if not on a regular basis, certainly from time to time. And that's the idea that we do too much assuming. And so my little nugget for you today is just never assume. And let me just kind of start out with giving you a little story that will hopefully make sense when it comes to this topic. There was a guy who was a reporter for a local television station, and it just so happens that there was a wildfire that broke out, and it was creeping its way slowly toward the town. And so his boss told him to get down and to the airport there locally and get on a little plane with somebody and get up in the air and get some good footage of that for the 6 o'clock news. And so that's what the guy did. He goes down there and he looks when he walks in the door. He looks outside and he sees a little Cessna sitting there warming up, and so he assumes that's his plane. So he hustles on out there and jumps in, and as soon as he jumps in, he tells the pilot who's sitting there, he says, "Okay, let's go, get up." And so the guy goes down the runway, and the pilot takes off, and he says, "Now, as soon as you get up, swing to the left and get over across the valley there." And said, I need to get some good shots." And so there was silence there for a second, and then the pilot says, "So you're not my flight instructor?" Now, that's just kind of a cutesy way of just saying, who was assuming there? Well, first off, the reporter assumed that was his plane that had been ordered for him, and the pilot assumed, since he was not even licensed to fly alone yet, that was his flight instructor. So you can see how that would be just a big mistake. So let me give you just a couple, 3 examples of just some situations from my life where I have assumed, and it could have really been a terrible situation. The first one was 35 years, I guess, ago. I was working as a field inspector for an environmental company, and I was asked to go to Birmingham, Alabama, and do some termite re-inspections for some customers up there. They had a guy that was out sick, and they were way behind on them, and so they sent me to Birmingham, and I went there, and it was in an area of town where these were little shotgun houses that were very close to each other, and it was not the richest neighborhood in town, obviously. And so I got going and did my inspection. It was the middle of August. It was 103 degrees there. You can imagine, how grimy and grubby you get if you're crawling up under a house and you're looking for problems. And so I did. I checked the house, and as I was coming back out, as I said, the houses were so close together that there was a woman that was sitting on the porch next door, and it wasn't but 10 feet away, and she just said, "Oh, so you checking houses?" I said, "Well, yes, ma'am. This is a customer of my company, and we do checkups from time to time." She said, "Yeah, I've seen you guys out here." She said, "Well, I don't have anything like that, but I just wanted to know, could you check my house for termites?" And again, it was 103 degrees. I was not really excited about doing that, but sure enough, I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I can do that for you." And so I went under and checked the house, and it didn't take 10 minutes, and I saw that there was some active termites there. So I came back and reported to her what I saw, and she says, "Well, how much will it cost to get that fixed and to get the house under some kind of a protection plan like my neighbor?" And I just pulled a figure out of my head that was pretty close probably, but I didn't get real scientific about it because I assumed that she couldn't afford it and that she wasn't serious about it. And she said, wait right here, when I gave her the amount. And she goes back to the back of the house and comes back about 3 minutes later with a big wad of cash. And she says, well, can you give me a receipt for this? And so, I was able to pick up a new customer that day. But I almost didn't, just because of the assumption that I made is that she can't afford it. Another example is some years later, I was a sales manager for a food brokerage company, and we had reached a point where we needed some help, but we didn't need a full-time salesperson. I already had 4 or 5 of those guys running around, but we needed somebody that could unload trucks and get food samples when they were shipped in, and run errands, and go and for small stores and pick up damage when we got a call saying we had some damaged product, and all these basic humdrum kind of things. And so I looked around and interviewed a little bit, and I found a guy who was going to the local college there in the town where I was at the time. And he was just a really sharp guy. And so he was excited about doing the job. And so we started him out, and I gave him sort of a little route of small stores, very small stores, that we really just didn't call on because they just couldn't afford to buy quantities of anything that we sold. And so this guy's name was Jack. And so I said, Jack, here's a list of stores that I want you to kind of make the rounds on, pick up any damaged goods, just kind of, just sort of politic a little bit with them, and see if these folks are happy with the products that they do carry on the shelves that we represent. And so he did start doing that. And then he came back to me just a couple of months later and was doing a really good job. And he said, will you allow me to sell display quantities to these stores? And I said, well, Jack, they won't buy that. They don't have the room to display it. He said, well, I believe I could get that done. And so, because I assumed that they wouldn't buy it, I almost didn't let Jack go do that. But he did that, and within just a few weeks, he started bringing some orders in of some quantities that I thought were just outrageous for these little tiny corner stores. And so there's another example of an assumption that I made that was just very incorrect. And when I left that company, Jack had graduated from college and had come full time and was one of the top salespeople there. And that just goes to show you that assuming never pays off. And the third and final example is again some years after that, I was selling financial service products. Investments, insurance, those basic kind of things. Now, I know it sounds like I can't hold a job, but in this particular case, I got a call one day from a guy who was retiring, and he wanted to roll over his retirement money, and he wanted to put it into U.S. government securities, into something like a mutual fund. And so I said, well, that'd be great. What kind of money are we talking about? And he gave me a 6-figure amount. And so I said, woohoo, and so I jump on my horse and I head out that way. And, the farther I go, the worse it looks. I mean, the neighborhood was not good. I started telling myself, this is going to be just a wasted trip. This guy's not even going to understand how these funds work and that sort of thing. And so I went into the little house, and the guy said, well, come back here and sit down here. And I sat down with him. And as I looked up on the wall, I saw a diploma from Mississippi State where he had an MBA degree. And so he probably knew more about government securities than I've ever learned in my life. And so we chatted for a few minutes, and he pretty much told me what he wanted. I did get the sale, but I came very, very close to just cutting that thing really short, just thinking to myself, because of where he lived and what the situation looked like, he's not going to understand this stuff, so he won't buy it. So there's 3 examples right there that just tell you that that's not a smart thing to do. Now, in your sales career, you've probably done the same kind of thing, but let me just close by just saying this. Just never, ever, never, ever, ever assume. If you write that word out and you divide it off, the word assume, A-S-S-U-M-E, makes an ass out of you and me. So take that selling point nugget and go out and make some sales.